So the U.S.-Canada trade war does not seem to be headed toward a truce anytime soon. The Wall Street Journal now reporting both countries are bracing for a prolonged dispute that could last until after the midterm elections. Trade talks broke down over the weekend. The Canadians say the White House kept adding last-minute changes to the proposed deal, but Trump administration officials say the problem is Canada.
They are one of the worst countries in the world to deal with. They have taken advantage of the United States for many decades, actually.
Your country screws us. You're the problem. Look in the mirror at your tariff codes. You are the problem.
What we've said to Canada is stop it. Stop taking advantage of America. It's over.
After a year of that retaliation, we've said enough. They came in and they wanted more, and we weren't prepared to do that.
Our next guest has been warning about the fraying relationship between the two countries, writing in the New York Times that Canada will have to decide whether it wants to be a U.S. partner or live under its control. Joining us now, Chrystia Freeland. She's the former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada and Finance Minister. She's the author of the upcoming memoir, Unreliable Boyfriend. Thank you so much for being here. It's almost like, as I'm just going through that intro, I cannot believe we're talking about the United States and Canada. How damaging could prolonged trade talks be for both of our economies? This serves no one.
Stephanie, I could not agree with you more. And at some level, it's so absurd that it can be hard to formulate words about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes. I am old enough to remember South Park had this movie whose premise, and it was like a comedy, and the premise was so ridiculous that it made it a joke. And it was called Blame Canada. And the premise was that sort of a pathetic U.S. government, to distract from domestic problems, was blaming Canada and actually ended up going to war. And what made it funny was it was absurd, because there would never be a conflict between the U.S. and Canada. But now there is. I am so worried about this, Stephanie. I am worried about it, of course, because it is going to hurt both of our economies. It is going to hurt Americans who are not feeling great about affordability. You know, tariffs are a tax. It's going to make things more expensive for Americans. But I'm also worried about this because I'm really concerned that it fundamentally changes how the world works. And I fear that we are at a moment when countries like Canada that have treasured their relationship with the United States are going to start seeing the U.S. not as an ally and as a partner, but as a hostile, dangerous force in the world. I think that's bad for America. I think it's bad for all of us.
You called this trade war self-mutilating. Can you just break down what would become more expensive? Because it's not like a huge number, but really it's this move that maybe no longer will we be partners that's so long-term damaging.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And look, I've been listening to your show, waiting to come on, and you talked about energy and gas prices. Well, one of the things that is so absurd about this trade war is in imposing tariffs on Canada. This is even without the Canadian retaliation. The U.S. is effectively making energy more expensive. One of the areas that the U.S. has imposed tariffs on, and this is your own choice, is 50% tariffs on Canadian aluminum. Mm-hmm. Now, aluminum is basically electricity in solid form. And so you are choosing to impose tariffs on the equivalent of 6 Hoover dams, on the equivalent of 466 data centers. And the last time I checked, AI was just so energy hungry. Americans were concerned about power prices, and you are voluntarily choosing to make them higher. That, to me, is just nuts.
Then give me the Canadian side, right? You were at the negotiating table for USMCA. You know Prime Minister Carney. You served in his cabinet at one point. What is your take on how he and his team are handling this?
Well, first of all, I want to correct one thing that came across in those clips that you played from the administration. This notion that Canada is hard to get along with. I think a regular American person will say, wow, that's kind of weird. I find the Canadians to be quite nice. But I can also give you a data point, which is Canada is the only G7 country that has a trade deal with every other G7 country. So the rest of the world finds it pretty easy to do trade deals with us, and they want to do it. The other thing that is so perverse about the current situation, and, we just heard a bunch of Trump administration officials and the president himself talk about how terrible the current deal is. Guess who negotiated the current deal?
Jared Kushner.
Yeah, and Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, I was there when the deal was concluded. He said this is the best trade deal ever. It actually is a great agreement. It is one of the few points on which Democrats and Republicans agreed. Sherrod Brown voted for it. Nancy Pelosi supported it. And Trump supported it. So the thing that is so frustrating and also scary for me is we have a relationship that was working. And for reasons that are really hard to understand, the White House is trying to break it. From the Canadian perspective, it looks like a pure issue of dominance, a pure desire to make us your vassal. And, Trump talks about Canada being the 51st state. When we see this kind of absurd economic hostility, it makes you think he really means it.
Chrystia, there are two things I really like: bipartisanship and your Canadian accent. But unfortunately, we're out of time, so we cannot discuss either one any longer. But come back and we can talk about it anytime. I really love your accent. Thank you so much. Good luck on your new book.